Well, hello, and welcome to yet another exciting episode of Skeptics and Seekers. I'm your host, David the Skeptic, and I'm joined by my good friend, David Russell. David
Hey.
Russell, time to tussle with Russell.
Yes, I'm not Robinson today.
Yes, no, not Robinson today. And you know what? When I was practicing this, I kept saying Robinson, and this is why I did the whole tussle with Russell thing, because it was, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
It
Yeah,
happens,
folks, I'm pretty scatterbrained. You'll be surprised. I actually misspelled the name of one of the authors in the book Surviving Corona.
man. Ooh.
Yeah, yeah, that was
Yeah.
brought to my attention. Anyway, yeah, never mind that. I'm perfect. Never mind.
It
Uh,
happens, man. Hey, look, I run a show too, and guess what? I get names wrong too, man. It happens.
Excellent. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to pick up pretty much where we left off. The last podcast you heard from this channel was Dale and Val. What a great discussion. I feel like it was only a third of a discussion because I know that Val had a lot more to go. He hadn't even, so for those who heard the discussion thinking, well, Val, that's an interesting idea, but I still don't know where you are. Val had a lot more to go. He hadn't even gotten into his moral philosophy yet. So there will be some opportunity to go back and revisit that. But it was 3 hours as it was just about. And the only reason it doesn't look like 3 hours on your podcast feed is because I edited down some of that. And so there will be more Dale and Val. Don't worry, that conversation isn't over. For those of you who are tuning in for the very first time, Marvin and I, a few weeks ago, had a conversation about morality. And we knew that we weren't going to scratch the surface on that. And so we devised a plan to have a series of podcasts. Last time it was Dale and Val on moral ontology. This week it's David and David on moral epistemology. In a few days, actually tomorrow, I think it is, it will be on the practicality of how one works out morality on things such as homosexuality. And so I think that's going to be the main topic, but we're going to see how the epistemology and ontology work in real life situation. We're going to go to another slightly philosophical area of that and talk about whether morality makes any sense under naturalism at all, or do you actually need some kind of supernatural component for it? And finally, we're going to wrap up with Brian with a Y and Marvin coming back, and they will wrap up the series. I will be sitting in on that show, by the way. Not going to promise to be entirely silent. And who knows? There may be some other drop-ins on the finale. It's been a really fun project. I want to thank all of the people who came along for the ride. This thing was put together really quickly, and so special thanks for all the people who made room in their schedule to come and do this with us. One other little meta announcement: David Russell. David Russell. David
Yeah.
Russell. Learn the name. Learn the name. Season 3. You're going to see a lot more of David Russell in the permanent co-host chair. Now, he won't be there every week, but he will be the guy. He will be the guy going forward. The man, David Russell. David Russell.
I will just be there to keep you in check, my friend.
He will be there to keep me in check while I keep him in checkmate.
Yes.
Yeah, so
you can try.
Do you have any thoughts before I get going here? Do you have any thoughts on the discussion between Dell and Val, other than what hell of a conversation?
Yeah, I mean, it was long. It was good. Sorry, I have a cat trying to invade my space here. But yeah, I thought it was really good. It did go on long. I thought Val did an excellent job of being cordial and friendly and so on. And yeah, I thought it was really good. I think the guys hit a lot of good areas. They talked about more realism. They actually broke down what you and Marvin weren't able to get into. And that's the funny thing is when I started out, I did listen to you and Marvin, and I was like, man, it seems like Marvin is looking for the right words to say, but he can't he can't grab them right now, maybe because he didn't prepare in that way, So yeah, and I think the guys covered that, and I think they covered a lot with moral ontology. I think they did a great job. Of course, I would agree with Dale a little bit more, but yeah, so that's where I'm at there.
Okay, you okay there?
Yeah, I'm gonna kill this cat. Is what's gonna
Yeah.
happen.
So you see what I have. You see, I have a door.
Yeah,
It's
and
over
it's
there,
about to happen. It's
and
about
I
to
and I
happen.
close it, and then the animals are on the other side of the door.
You know what? I usually do that too, but yeah, the litter box is down there, so
Yeah.
I wasn't able to do that. So if you give me a minute, I will go put them somewhere else. So
Hey, why don't you, go ahead. I'm going to
go
go
ahead.
ahead and get started.
Get all right. Go for it.
I so I have a statement prepared, and I'm going to read it badly because bad reading is kind of what I do. Um, it's you can find it though. I have already posted it in the comments on the board here where this show is going to appear. It's called Two Goods, and I kind of want to get things started with that and see where we go from here. I have a few other thoughts. Dale and Val did a lot of heavy preparation, and their show went very long, and they didn't cover a lot of what they wanted to talk about. David and I are going to do the opposite by having prepared very little, and so I think that it's going to be much better. What could possibly go wrong? Two goods. Goes something like this. Earlier this week, I said I don't believe in morality as defined by most Christians. I was asked if there was any definition of morality I believed in. The answer is mostly no. I believe humans are as amoral as any other advanced primate. Morality is a human construct. If we didn't invent it, it wouldn't exist. Morality, as I see it, is a set of rules and conventions defining the optimal social interactions of ontologically social creatures like ourselves. Over time, some of those conventions have become so useful as to be considered axiomatic. The religious impulse of some moves them to escalate the axiom by enshrining it as sacred. And once a thing is considered sacred, a sacred axiom, it becomes indistinguishable from Holy Writ. From there, the good, small g, is transformed into the good, little g, which becomes further transformed into the God. Now, I do not believe in God, so it shouldn't be too surprising that I don't believe in the good. I don't believe in sacred axioms. I hold nothing sacred. What I believe is that higher order primates like ourselves have more strictly defined rules for social order that we have evolved and codified over countless eons. Many of them are quite useful, many are not. None rise to the level of sacred law, which cannot be reconsidered. All this is by way of introduction to a rather simple concept of two kinds of good. One I believe in, the other I don't. I will illustrate this by listing two dichotomies. One, good and bad. Two, good and evil. Every system has the states of good and bad. Good describes the state of productive function, while bad describes the state of unproductive dysfunction. In a social system, good is productive, pro-social function. Bad is antisocial dysfunction. It is not magical or supernatural or sacred. It is a simple description of the functioning of a social system. This definition of good and bad works for all social systems, including those of other animals. The other type of good is associated with the sacred. Good and evil are terms describing metaphysical concepts. In this case, good is synonymous with righteousness. It is that which comports with the objective nature of the righteous. Evil is that which opposes the higher order of righteousness and is the outworking of a metaphysical notion of sin. I do not believe in God, objective morality as the outworking of good or sin. This type of good has no place in my thought process. Now that you understand the two goods of which I speak, it should be a little easier to understand the morality I reject. I make no distinction between the good and the moral. The good to which the Christian refers is tied to their notion of the sacred. It is a brand of morality that cannot exist for the atheist. Saying that I do not believe in a Christian notion of morality should be no more shocking than me saying I don't believe in sin or evil. The good I do believe in is more along the lines of social ethics. If I could get away with never using the loaded term morality, I would. Simply, ethics is concerned with achieving the greatest social good with a small g. Another way of talking about the productive function of the social system is simply to practice the practice of doing the right thing in a given situation. Sometimes the right thing is so obvious and axiomatic, we mistake it for sacred moral law. But by my way of thinking, it never truly is. David, anything there that makes you want to regurgitate?
Well, for this discussion, David, I think that no, I mean there's a lot there to cover, and most of it has to do with moral ontology and not moral epistemology. And if we're going to discuss epistemology, and you're talking about going into social ethics and this and that, I think that we're going to find that we're going to have a lot in agreement. And this is probably going to be the shortest podcast you've ever hosted.
Excellent. Excellent. Because I have a lot of crap to do today. So
yeah, I mean, if I was discussing moral ontology with you, I mean, we could go all day. How we come to know our morals and values, I think that's very broad, and I'm open to ideas of how we can progress further into understanding what's right in the world. But I am a moral realist. I'm a cognitivist. I'm a moral realist. And, it's kind of hard to put a definition on where you're at because sometimes and this is just the inconsistency I see in a position like yours or in a worldview like yours. I think Val did a very good job of representing natural moral realism.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably the best I've heard do that on air on podcast. Mm-hmm. But natural moral realism. But it kind of seems like part of you wants to affirm moral realism and in a naturalistic sense. But then the other side of you is like, no, I just want to be non-cognitive.
Yes.
So I just don't know where you fit on that structure there.
Well, so let me address that a little bit.
Okay.
So first of all, I think that we are almost feeling forced into a world of academia that I don't think this discussion should be mired in. But we're trying to think deeply about the topic. And so we're borrowing from academia when we're two meat and potatoes kind of guys. I don't, for instance, if we had talked about this for maybe 5 years ago, I wouldn't have even known what you meant by moral philosophy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean I
get that. Yeah.
Here's the thing. man or woman on the street does not have a moral philosophy. They don't know what the hell you're talking about. You
Yeah.
know, so that's not a thing, right? That's a thing in a classroom if you're taking philosophy. That's not how average people do morals. And so um, the thing that I want to represent on this show at all times is the average person, whether they're in or out of the pew. I can for myself in a private discussion do a little bit better than the average person. I think I can on some subjects get as scholarly as you like, but I don't like presenting that side of myself publicly. That's not how I preached when I preached. It's not how I taught people. That's not how I interact with people on a regular basis. Um, and that's not how people are. And so I think it's very important that if we're talking about something like moral philosophy, we need to do it at the level of normal people. And so I do feel a little bit like we're kind of forced, or it's a little forced, especially with me, to speak in philosophical scholarly terms on something.
Yes.
So I would say first off, I don't have a moral philosophy. Deal with it, because I'm a normal person. Okay, and
Yeah,
that's
and well,
that's not,
here's my issue, and just give you some pushback here is that the way we talk about morals and stuff, your average Joe is going to be all over the place, and you get down lost on rabbit trails that you had no idea existed. And that's where I'm coming from is like I think moral philosophy gives us a structure and where we can kind of say, okay, now we can discuss this. And if we're thinking deeply about it, we're actually on the academic level because that's what the academics do. They're thinking deeply about this stuff. And for me, I would love the structure that these moral philosophies give you. And it came to a shock to me over my research over the last 5 years that there are actually a lot more moral realists, whether they're natural moral realists or not natural moral realists, than there are not in the non-cognitive, anti-realist, quasi-realist, whatever there's so many different subsections here. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty wild to me to see that there are more realists than non-moral realists.
that's not a surprise to me.
Yeah.
So let's just very briefly unpack a couple of these terms that are put out there before I address them. So
Okay.
moral realism. Also, I kind of associate that with the cognitivist view that there is a right and wrong to moral questions. So, for instance, if we put forth a moral conundrum, you may or may not know what the answer is, but what you know is that there is a right or wrong answer. And so that's a cognitivist view. A non-cognitivist view would say, actually, you're making a category error. There is no right or wrong answer to this because morality is not an area where there is a right or wrong. Now, that said, it does not surprise me that there are so many moral realists out there. I think that's the natural position to take. I think it's the most intuitive position to take. I think it's wrong, but I understand it. Right? I think it's as wrong as flat Earth. Flat Earth is also the intuitive position to take. Um, so I think I get it, and it doesn't surprise me. Even philosophers, it doesn't surprise me that so many of them are moral realists. Someone asked me, in fact, Marvin asked me earlier today, um, do I think that the majority of philosophers are wrong? Well, yes, I do. I don't have a problem saying that. But none of what I'm saying should be a surprise when you really process the fact that I am an amoralist, which is to say, I don't actually believe in the concept of morals at the level that we're talking about anyway. So I think that in the same way that other higher order primates, you would say, well, they're amoral. I think that we are amoral as well, but we have more stringent and particular social rules because we have a little bit higher of a social order, because we have bigger brains and we have more complex interactions. And so you need more complex rules to deal with more complex social interactions. And so those complex rules, when they are evolved over hundreds of thousands of years, become codified as axioms, and they seem like they're coming from somewhere other than yourself. But before there were humans, there weren't any morals.
Okay, I no, I get what you're saying. I mean, I disagree. I think under more realism that there are basics to this earth, that there are basic things that are real. I mean, they are real whether we believe them or not. And I believe that morality is objective. Obviously, I take the theist stand on that. I'm not going to give you a William Lane Craig argument here, but I think the burden of proof's on you to disprove that intuitive aspect that we have that's so strong. That's our starting point. That's the intuitive starting point there. And I think that you have to come up with an argument that makes it more probable than the more realist position. And again, we're not discussing a moral epistemology now.
We'll get to epistemology.
We leave epistemology. We go back to ontology, and that's where we're kind of stuck. I don't, and yeah, because I think there's a lot we could discuss on moral ontology. I think there's a lot we can discuss on a moral epistemology, how we come to know that. I mean, there's several places we can go. We learn them from our ancestors, or divine revelation for your non-natural moral theorist. So I mean, there's just several ways you could go, and that's one of the things that I asked you for specifics on, and you're like, oh, we're just going to keep it broad. Well, we're broad. That's yes. For sure, brother.
we're right in the middle of where we need to be right now. We'll get to epistemology. I promise. Okay. I'm not going to be like Dale and Val, who never actually got to their points. We're going to get there. So, but I do want to, Dale and Val, you will have another chance, guys. Okay. I do want to kind of lay a little bit of this ontological groundwork. A little bit more, at least on the level of the common man talking about high things. So you say, well, the burden of proof is mine to show that our intuition is wrong. That may be. I don't want to waste a lot of time trying to figure out who has the burden of proof, because I don't mind, trying to take on a little bit of burden of proof, but I don't think that's the most interesting part of the conversation. I also don't think that you just get to claim, well, we all think it's this way, and so that's proof that it's that way, and you have to disprove it. Well, we all think it's that way is not a good reason. It's a reason. You can put it on your stack of reasons why you think that moral realism is true, but by itself, no one would say, oh, well, that's a good reason, and therefore it must be true. And so I would say, just like maybe you haven't heard convincing arguments for a non-cognitivist approach, I also haven't heard convincing arguments for the cognitive approach. And the idea that there are moral truths out there. So it usually goes something like this, and maybe you can do better, but it usually goes, well, we feel like some things are morally true because we have a strong instinct about it. We feel strongly emotional about some things. It's wrong to torture babies for fun. I mean, don't you think it's wrong to torture babies for fun? You see how I'm pulling at your emotions there? Of course, it must be wrong to torture babies for fun. And if we both think that it's wrong to torture babies for fun, then it must not be natural. It must be coming from somewhere else. That's actually kind of a poor argument. That's not a great argument.
Yeah, but David, don't you think that they're describing what reality is. I mean, or what's going on. I mean, cognitivists say that moral claims are describing or attempting to describe reality. And if someone is expressing a moral claim, then they're expressing a belief about what they believe is real. And I think that intuition is, because they're so daggone intuitive, that, we're not saying that, I guess we're saying that we trust that there is something there, whether it's natural or supernatural. That's where we will have our disagreement. But you're saying that we're amoral, it's not there at all. And that's what I'm like, well, David, you're jumping back and forth. Like, where are you at?
Yeah, but I don't think there's anything there in the sense that you mean. So yeah.
So you don't think it's actually wrong to torture babies for fun, for example?
That's such a great soundbite. It's a great cheap soundbite.
I just wonder though, David, because you brought it up, and I just want to say, okay, so let me.
It's brought up all the time.
Let's scratch that. As far as it comes to intuition, you went on a little bit about that, and I'm not saying that. I don't assume skepticism about my experience of the physical world, unless I'm given reason to, like you said. I obviously it's not the stopping point for my argument.
Sure.
But I think it is up to the person trying to come against that intuitive nature that we have, that they got to come up, they have that burden of proof. That's all I was saying. Of course, there's a bigger argument here. There's a bigger discussion here.
Well, I think our physical senses are a little bit different than other types of intuition. So I think that smell, taste, touch, hearing, whatever the other thing is, sight, are pretty good markers that there is something physically there.
And that's where I would say, I think, obviously, my moral intuition is a good indicator that there is an actual moral realm.
But here you're just proposing a moral intuition. We're not proposing taste. We know.
Are you sure? How do you know? Unless are we going back? I mean, if we're philosophical, if we're going to question that moral intuition, then we're going to have to question all of our senses and jump into philosophical skepticism.
I think there's a reason why we don't call moral intuition a sense. It's not a sense.
I think it is. I think it is part of our sense experience. It is part of what we experience, and it gives us a proper warrant to believe that there's something real to this moral realm.
Yeah. So I think that's a pretty good place where we diverge. Because I don't believe that our moral intuition, our emotions, speaking even more broadly, I would not consider that a sense in that it's reliable in telling us things about the world around us. It may help us describe our internal state, but it doesn't. My emotion about this table doesn't tell me anything about this table. The fact that I can knock on wood tells me something about this table. So I understand that you have, that we all have, or well, I say we all, that non-psychopaths
we all
have something that we would call an emotional, a moral intuition. And I'm using these terms fairly broadly, but that's just shorthand for our highly evolved consciences helping us navigate between other social creatures what we've come to think of as right and wrong. And some of those things are very intuitive and obvious, and so they feel like they are coming from somewhere else. But the fact is, over thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, we have learned that killing people for no good reason is a bad thing. That's a bad thing. it doesn't need to come from God. We have learned that over a long time of actually killing people for no good reason, and we've kind of seen the results of that. And so we have a fairly evolved conscience that that's a bad thing now. Killing babies for fun is a bad thing. Rape is a bad thing. But the reason we know that is not because we were born as a species with this knowledge. We were not born as a species with this knowledge. As a species, we did all of these things, and we have evolved this knowledge over time. That emotional, that moral intuition.
So David, if we have developed this sense over a long time, I don't see how you could demonstrate that. Could you demonstrate that we've developed this moral sense over a long time? Now, epistemology, yeah, we learn from each other and this and that, but to say that that's the reason we have that sense is because we evolved that sense. I don't think that's the case. I think that there's a lot of convergence. What do you think about moral convergence?
I'm not familiar with that term.
So basically, all of our morals converge throughout all time and stuff like that. They converge. I mean, we can disagree, but that's not an argument against moral realism. Okay, so basically, how can I phrase this to make it really, really easy here? Okay, even if we have disagreements on what morals are, but that just shows that we have a fallible understanding that our compass can be off. But as far as convergence goes, we have this idea at the underlying issue of it all. All right, like for example, we talk about there's certain tribes in Africa, for example, that kill deformed infants, right? Right, and we say, oh my gosh, that's wrong. Why? Because we know that deformed infants aren't, evil, and that's the reason they do kill them. Now the same tribe says, yeah, killing infants is wrong, but these deformed children aren't infants, they're demons. You know what I mean? So just because they have this factual error doesn't mean that we all don't experience killing infants is wrong. So convergence is that we do all have this moral sense. And I think that goes in a good way towards moral realism. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I think that you're more proving my point than yours. So I would say if you go back historically, and you can look at aberrations like this African tribe or some Aboriginal tribes, or some of the mountain peoples in our own nation, our own country, that are somewhat backward. You can go back though in time, and you can see where these moral intuitions were not in effect, when they were much less in effect. And you can see how we have developed over time. And I think that development has happened faster the smaller the world has gotten. And by that, I mean that the more social we have become across territories. And so now we have a kind of a global society. And I think that social awareness is advancing even faster. It's a little bit harder to hide and be unaffected by the momentum of social progress, as it were. But in some places where they have kind of pulled themselves out of the social evolution pool, you can see that they are not as socially evolved. They do not have some natural sense that this is wrong. They have to learn that. And if you pull yourself out of that evolutionary track, you're not going to know that. And if it was, social, somehow some kind of moral realism, I would think that you would know that. We would have been born with a species as this knowledge, with this knowledge. It's not something that we would have had to develop over time.
Well, absolutely, we'd have to develop over time if we're discovering morality and we're discovering these truths about our world. It's just like science. Science is discovering the secrets of the universe. We're getting closer. Why? Because we develop theories. We learn more. And just like morality and how this world works, we're in this realm, we're discovering through observation these things, these truths about our world.
Okay,
And
tell
how
me
we
more
treat
about
each
the
other.
discovery. Tell me more about that. How do people discover moral realities that are already there?
Well, how do we discover anything in science that's already there? I mean,
Well, you
there's
see,
things that we discover
if
all the time.
I might find a diamond because it was buried under some rocks, and I moved the rocks, and there it was. Um, I don't know how you discover moral facts. I mean,
Okay, well, let me give you a quote from Richard Boyd here. In
okay.
the sciences, we decide between theories on the basis of observations, which have an important degree of objectivity. It appears that in moral reasoning, moral intuitions play the same role which observations do in science. We test general moral principles and moral theories by seeing how their consequences conform or fail to conform to our moral intuitions about particular cases. So, I mean, that's kind of like where I see it going. Are you thinking about that?
I, I may have missed the import of it. I'm sorry. Why
Uh,
don't you
did I
summarize that
freeze
for me?
up? Did I freeze
No, no,
up?
no, no. I got it. I just
Okay.
my
Well,
my
I know
brain
because you froze
froze
up a
up.
couple minutes ago.
Did I?
So,
Okay. No, no, you did not freeze up. I maybe summarize what you just read because I may have missed some part of it.
all right. So basically, he's saying that in the sciences, we decide between theories on the basis of observations. So how we come to know moral facts is we observe them, we test them. We just like we. Let me just read this one more time.
Mhm.
Um, in the sciences, we decide between theories on the basis. I can't summarize a summary, right? in in the sciences, we decide between theories on the basis of observations, which have an important degree of objectivity. It appears that in moral reasoning, moral intuitions play the same role which observations do in science. We test general moral principles and moral theories by seeing how their consequences conform or fail to conform to our moral intuitions about particular cases. So
All right.
my whole thing here, David, also is that we I don't I think we've always had this intuitive sense. Just because it's not developed or it's underdeveloped in certain cases or in certain cultures doesn't mean that it's not there, because we still display it even
So
in those.
how do you recognize a moral fact? Let's say we've run across some moral fact. I mean, it's obviously not sitting on the ground like a diamond.
Finally
Uh,
in moral epistemology now.
well, we're getting there. Yeah, this
This
is
is
a good phrase.
epistemology right here. Go ahead.
So how do you recognize you're saying that we discover moral facts?
Mhm.
How do you know you've discovered a moral fact?
Because of how it conforms and how it correlates to reality, how it
So
works.
you mean how you feel about it?
Not just how you feel about
Okay,
it,
so what?
but
How do you know
you
that?
see an evident display in the world around you.
How do you recognize a moral fact?
Just like I how do you recognize an epistemic fact? Like seriously, there's
I
come
mean,
on,
I can
we're
walk
talking about
along the
intuition.
beach and stub my toe on a rock. I've discovered a rock. How do you recognize a moral fact? How do you even know you're looking at a moral fact?
You know,
I don't
you're
know what you're talking about.
see, and that's the thing is I don't. How do you understand that it's a rock? What processes do you use to tell you that that's a rock?
I stubbed my toe on it
You
and I
stubbed
picked it
your
up and
toe,
it's a
so
rock.
you're receiving some pain sensors, sensory, some electrons and or synapses are firing in your brain to tell
We
you,
know
"Ow, that hurt,"
we know
and then
what
you're like,
rocks are.
then you observe the rock, and you're saying, "Okay, that's a rock," and that's how we
Because we
we
know
know
what
what the
rocks
world.
are. We know what
We know what
rocks are.
morals are. We know
No, we
this
no. You see,
intuitively. There you go.
you just keep stating it and claiming it. I don't believe we know what morals are. I don't
Aren't you
believe that.
doing
I
the
don't
same
believe they're
thing
real.
though by saying that we don't know? I mean, I'm saying we do know
Well,
because
give me
I
an
think that
example.
there's good arguments.
Give me an example of discovering a moral fact. Give me an example of a moral fact that we discovered. It was there before we happened upon it, but we discovered it. Tell me what that is.
Well, David, let's go back though. Let's go back because again, we're having moral disagreement, right? I mean, we're having disagreement on the way things work.
Being
I
immoral.
think I think if we go back a little bit, we can actually establish why we have these sense perceptions of morality. I think that's what we should focus on if we want to get into this epistemic or this or ontological
So
argument.
I can understand where
I
you're
mean,
coming from
you
if you
saying
can
how
give
do I
me an example.
discover a certain moral fact?
Just give me an
You're coming
example
from
of a
any
moral
other
fact.
ways
Give me a moral fact that we've discovered.
that murder is wrong,
How did we
right?
discover that?
By its effect in our society and the effect of how things happen. How it correlates to it being wrong. It's
So,
not right. It violates our intuition. And we also know that it has negative effect on society.
well, it apparently does not violate the intuition of the person doing the murdering. So how did we decide that that was
How
a
do you
moral
know that?
fact?
How do you know what it doesn't violate? Just because they do it doesn't mean it's not violating some inner consciousness,
Oh,
and they just want to do it. I mean, but I have no way of proving that, either do you.
okay.
So what I'm
So
saying is,
I'm trying to get a sense of why you are saying that we have discovered that murder is wrong. How did that? I take it there was a time
so David, you don't believe in
that
moral
we thought
progress
that
at
murder
all.
was not wrong. If for us to discover that it's wrong, we would have had to have a time when we didn't have that discovery, right?
Well, we would have, yeah, I would think so, but I would also think we'd also have an intuition that this realm exists. How we come to know that realm is through discovery.
Okay,
So
well,
does that make more sense? Am I breaking that down a little bit better? I'm not sure
maybe,
if I'm breaking it down
maybe,
right.
but that's why I keep asking for examples. So give me an example of something that we didn't know was a moral fact, and we discovered it was a moral fact.
I don't know if I can give you one off the top of my head here.
Well, but you're saying that moral facts are things that are already there that we discover.
I think they're realities that we find out about the world as we progress. Does that make sense? So I think we have this
Yeah, I mean that makes sense, but
intuition
then you should
to
be
where
able
we
to give me an example.
perceive a moral realm through this intuition. Okay, and like I said, I didn't prepare for moral ontology. That's why I'm kind of like all over the place here.
That's okay. That's okay.
But as
Because
far as
I think that we are exactly where the common man would be if any other
I
two
think
people were
we
having this
have this,
conversation.
I think we have this intuition, and I think we have an intuitive sense of the moral realm. How we come to know those morals is through time, progress, discovery, stuff like that. So I mean, I'll kind of repeat myself here, but
Right.
you
And
know what
so
I'm
I
going.
could actually agree with much of the language you're using, though not quite all of it. You're just saying that our moral sense is sensing a thing that is already there, and we're just becoming more aware of those things as we stumble across them. And I am saying that no, we are things become a part of our moral sense as we learn to work together more closely as social beings. And so I am asking for an example
But you're
because
still,
I can give
but
an
hold
example
on,
of what I'm
David.
saying, and you
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
give
but
me an example
David,
of what you're
but
saying.
here's the thing though. But here's the thing though, David. You're really not. You're trying to. You're still assuming a moral imperative in your conversation here. You're still saying we discover this as we work together, but it's not real. That's kind of like all you're doing. I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying it is real, and that's what I think where we're going to diverge. I don't think we're going to get anywhere on that.
Well, I think that social rules are real, but they're not pre-existent to the society. So if you and I form a society of podcasters named David, we might develop some rules about that. But as we form other societies with other people not named David, there may be some different rules about that. the
But that,
rules for the Society of Podcasters named David is not pre-existent that we discover. We invent them as we have need.
okay. I disagree. I think uh, there's the whole idea for moral progression and moral convergence that says the opposite. So let me see if I can find um, a quote here or something that I wrote down on my paper here.
Okay, so while you're looking at that, I'll just I will give you my bridge to the epistemology conversation. By the way, for those of you who think that we have not been talking about moral epistemology, we really have been. These are kind of the foundations of where you get to. Now, ultimately, one of the reasons I don't look at the moral philosophies and think, okay, I choose this one, is because I don't think it matters. At the end of the day, I think that we are engaged in a lot of mental masturbation by focusing too much on moral theory. Because let's say, well, I won't even say, whatever your moral theory is, we can compare that to my moral theory. When it comes down to figuring out what the right thing to do in any given situation, you don't have a leg up on me. And I don't have one on you. We have to go through the same type of mental calculus, if you will, to decide what the right thing is. And so I think that I can show that.
So you think you can show? Okay, then show it.
Okay,
then show it, David. I mean, like I said, this is not. I don't want to make this as just like a debate between me and you. We're discussing a roundtable that you're that you're going into, that you've had on your show, and I think we're backing off of what Dale and Val said last week. So give your theory out there, man. I mean, that's fine.
Yeah. So as far as the epistemological side of how we know, it's really epistemology. So in terms of a moral conundrum, and I consider a moral conundrum any time where you have to make a decision, whether it's how to think or what to do or how to treat someone. Then the question becomes, well, what is the right thing to do or think, or how should I treat that person? And so the example that's going to be discussed next week, so this is, and I think that there will probably be other examples because Matthew will be moderating that discussion, and I'm sure that he will make the topic broader. But homosexuality is a big one for me because when I was a Christian, I was about as anti-homosexual as you could get. Now, why was I anti-homosexual as a Christian? Because I thought that that's what God wanted. It's as simple as that. And so my moral philosophy, if you will, is, well, what would God want me to do? What would align me with the will of God? I think that's how a lot of Christians think today. If I'm wrong about that, maybe you should step in now before I go further with this.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I mean, there's obviously a few views here, so I mean, right. just take it away, man.
So that was mine, and I think that was it's true for most of the people that I knew in the church. Anyway, we're trying to align ourselves more and more every day with the will of God, and that happens through a number of ways, through practicing the gifts of the Spirit and representing the fruits of the Spirit, and we become more holy as we are more bathed in the Spirit, as it were. So that's how I would have solved that problem and everything dealing with homosexuality. Well, it's wrong. It's an abomination. God, in his purest form when he's dealing with a situation directly, wanted homosexuals to be put to death. I would have said, you know what, we don't live in a system where that's legal anymore, but that's really what they deserve. I would have said that because once again I was trying to be in alignment with the way I thought that God thought. Today, my views on homosexuality are about as liberal as you get. I simply, it's not even that I think it's right, it's that I just don't give a damn. I don't think it's even a moral question. Um, what's the difference? Well, I stopped trying to imagine what God would think. Now, I give this example for me. Um, I'll end this example with this. A few years ago, when I started studying this a little bit more carefully, and in fact, even before I left the church, I became curious about how other Christians were seeing this. It turns out that the majority of Christians, not by a broad margin, but the majority of Christians actually felt the other way. They thought that homosexuality was okay. It was not wrong, and it should not be restricted. It's fine, and you can. That's what the polls show today. This is not just general population. This is among Christians. What I'm describing now, and so let me just wrap it up here. So what I realized was that by my trying to use an epistemology of aligning myself with what I thought God would want to do, I actually, if you look at the whole of the church and the whole of Christendom on this view, I would have been out of alignment with that. And other Christians who were trying to do the same thing with the same type of epistemology were coming up with something different. And so even the strictest, most conservative religious view doesn't guarantee that you're going to come up with the same answer on big moral questions. We are still all making a similar kind of moral calculus. And it seems that whatever moral philosophy you have isn't necessarily the thing that's going to steer the conclusion you come up with. You and I are on different sides of the fence on a lot of things, but I bet we come up with very similar moral answers to moral conundrums.
That's because there's an actual objective morality out there, David.
I bet that we do, and I don't think it has anything to do with objectivity. But once again, people who have the same moral systems often come up with different moral solutions. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't seem to matter where you start. We're doing a calculus that is very similar, and I think that it's time that maybe we show our work a little bit and talk about, well, how do we get from moral question to moral solution? What is the methodology of coming up with that? And I don't think that methodology is described by philosophical moral systems.
No, I don't think so, because now you're jumping into a moral epistemology, how we come to know morality and how we come to know it. That's and it's a very interesting question. I mean, and it covers a broad range of theories here, such as some people say, well, it's divine revelation type thing, and then some people say, no, it's just my experience, or we come to know this by our culture or by years of development, and like I said, I'm open to learning about that. So I have a lot of different theories on how we come to understand and know our morality.
Sure.
So, well, I think our parents and the values in which they were raised on. If you want to go specifically in what I think the Bible talks about, I mean, we can.
Well, just tell me what you think. How do we come to know these moral truths? So never mind the more ontological questions that we started this conversation with. We get to a place here where you and I are going to start having a lot of agreement, and I find that agreement suspicious. quite frankly. But
Why? Because they got different motives.
no, well, no, I find it suspicious because we shouldn't uh, come up with so much agreement if we have such different starting points. Um, but we do. We have a suspicious level of agreement. I'm guessing. But give me some feedback. So how do you decide? And I will be glad to give you a couple of issues here. One issue out of the news yesterday, when I was watching the news yesterday morning, the California wildfires. We seem to have some California wildfires every year, but this is life in California. So this particular problem, the fires were, I don't remember the exact location, but they were threatening several homes in this area. And I'm guessing it was a fairly well-to-do area, but there weren't enough firefighters to go around. This is one of the problems in California right now. There's just not enough firefighters, which is one of the reasons the fires go so long. So the communities got together, as communities do there, and they formed a kind of a neighborhood firefighting squad, if you will, to try to save some houses. And they had saved, as of yesterday morning, 4 houses. Some people had died. I think some of the volunteers had died, but they had saved 4 houses, and they were still working even as the news cameras were filming them. As a part of that piece that they were doing in the wildfires, though, they got comments from officials and from firefighters. And what they were telling people is, please do not form these neighborhood firefighting communities. Please do not join them. Don't farm them. They cause more harm than good. They are dangerous. Please let the professionals do this. This created in my mind an immediate moral conundrum, because you're there. Maybe your home is safe, but some other people in the communities, their homes are in danger, and they need people to help them put this fire out. Do you join them and put the fire out and go against what the officials are saying, or do you say no? What the officials have said, this is a bad idea and we shouldn't do it, and do you not do it? How do you make that determination as to whether you're going to? I don't even care what the right answer is, because I don't think that you and I can know what the right answer is. I'm more interested in how we come to determine what we think the right answer is. So that's an example that you can.
Question. Yeah, well, that's a good question. I think that I mean, you have to weigh the evidence, right? I mean, let's say that these officials that are saying don't do this, it's because there's a tidal wave of toxic smoke that's going to level you out, and so you got to weigh why are they saying it's a bad thing, right? Versus helping your neighbor out, save their house. Right. So for me, how do I come to that is like, I'm probably going to not listen to the authorities and try to help my neighbor. So, I mean, and I'm sure you probably do the same thing.
Well, maybe, but if
well, if you examine, okay, what's the risks? What is this? Okay, what do I have to do and stuff like that? I'm sure you would.
So without revealing anything too personal, I think it's fair for the audience to know you are a first responder. You are a person who is your frame of mind is to help. That's what you do. You stand between average people and danger. So, and by the way,
he just saluted me for those that weren't watching that.
Yeah. So heartfelt. But you are the kind of person who would think that way, who would do that. Now you might ask, well, how did you get the frame of mind that you would want to do that? How does a person decide they want to become a Navy SEAL or a doctor or whatever? And once again, I would say there are eons of social evolution, and societies need people who are special and who stand out and who put themselves between harm's way and the bulk of the herd. That's always been the case. It will always be the case, and there will always be some that will have to be that kind of person. Now, I don't know whether I'm that person or not. So I've got bad knees. Now, when I was younger, yeah, I would have done it. I was very athletic, but I've got bad knees now. Recent surgeries on those. I've just had spine surgery within the past few weeks. Um, my vision isn't good. Any number of things. I could be the cause that someone has to then lose their life trying to save me while I'm out there trying to save someone else. Is it a good idea for me to do it? But then, maybe all they need is just one more bucket, one more person carrying the bucket, and that would have saved the house. Could I have done that? Maybe. I don't know. It's a very complicated calculus for me. I honestly don't know, and I would have to be there in the moment.
I agree.
To know.
I agree. Absolutely. I agree. I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you would have to be, and you'd have to examine yourself, and examine the situation and make the decision then.
But here's the thing. It's not a question of what the right thing to do is, because there is no right or wrong here. This is remember, I'm a moral non-cognitivist.
I know.
So
well, sometimes sometimes it's very hard to put. See, and this is what the warning I gave you about these type of discussions and being specific is because now look at me, I'm like going all over the place looking for the right note to find and to see to kind of be able to put things in words, because without specifics you can't prepare for certain things.
Yes, and so this example came up yesterday in the news, and it dawned on me, not as a kind of a gotcha kind of thing for this conversation. This is real life for me, and I face maybe not that situation, but I face this type of situation fairly frequently. An example of a situation that I face on an occasional basis is I pass by two people who are not violently, but they're voluminously, loudly shouting, arguing, and the situation might go to a place where maybe it's a man and a woman, and the man puts his hand on the woman in a restraining way, or a way that I would think of as not healthy, let's say. It's clearly a domestic situation. This is maybe, in my opinion, clearly a situation where they have rehearsed many times. So not the first time, probably not the worst it's ever been. Do I step into that situation and perhaps make it worse, get myself killed, or do I step in the situation and maybe save a life? This is a decision I have had to make on more than one occasion in my life.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I can go on.
Here's it, but yeah, and these examples, like, yeah, I could too. There's several, but you're saying that there isn't an actual right answer. Correct. I think there is a right answer, and how you basically make that decision is you do your best to either A, do the right thing, or B, somehow you justify not doing the wrong thing to yourself. Or the right thing for yourself. Did I say that right? Man, I'm all over the place with my language, man.
It's okay. They know what you mean.
I think there is a right answer, David, and that's my point. Is I truly do think there's a right answer, and I think that we can know that right answer, and just because we have a situation in which we have to choose. I want to say I have this example in my head, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to put it out right. Something like, you have an equation, all parts of the equation have to be present before the right decision could be made, right? So before the answer is given. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So I think that, yeah, that there is a right answer, but if you're missing a part of the equation, you're not going to be able to come to a full knowledge of what that right answer
But
is. Maybe, I don't know.
aren't you always missing a part of the equation?
Not always, I don't think. I think there's sometimes, yeah, I think we are, but then I think there's sometimes that we aren't.
So let me give you
But
one
that's
more
just
example, and maybe you want to pick up on that because, again, this is an example that you may have come across at some point in your life. Certainly, some of the listeners will have come across this in their life. And so you're going to a mall or grocery store or maybe just the Jiffy Mart down the street, and you get out of the car. The people get out of the car. You walk past. You see a baby in the back seat. It's really hot outside. Um, this immediately becomes a bit of a conundrum because, for all you know, the let's say it's the mother just left the car seconds ago, seconds before you walked up there. So the baby hasn't been in the car that long. And she was running into the Jiffy Mart to get milk for her baby, or maybe children's aspirin for her baby's fever. She's trying to do a responsible thing. She'll be back in less than a minute. This may be the situation. And since most people, I think, are reasonably responsible and are trying to do the right thing, there may be a good chance that that's the situation. Who knows? But the baby could also have been in the car for 15 minutes. And the mother may be at the bar next door to the Jiffy Mart getting drunk, and the baby may be near dying. Now, what do? Do you break the window and take the baby out? Well, I don't know. You might. I'm a black man. I would not.
oh Lord.
If you think I'm going to go smashing through some Lexus stealing a baby, I'm not even going to make it to the police station alive. So that's a different calculus for me, maybe. So yeah, what do? You have very partial information there. This is. I'm not just trying to pull out first year moral philosophy kind of stuff to make people chew on. This is the real life this is the real world that we live in right now, and people are going through these calculations right now. And I suggest that regardless of what your moral philosophy is not going to give you any advantage in figuring out the right thing to do in any of those situations. You're going to be faced with the same conundrum that I am. And, what we do has more to do with our upbringing and, whatever evolutionary paths we came down and so forth. It's not going to have that much to do with some artificial moral philosophy that we chose in philosophy class in college.
So basically, you're saying that all this moral philosophy and these moral ideas you've been hosting for the past weeks now is just bunk.
I think I called it mental masturbation.
Yeah, bunk. So, all of it's just bunk.
I like
yeah, Dave.
Better,
okay, Dave.
Sure.
You are totally right within your rights to think of it that way. I think once you take a jump off this deep end here and dive into moral philosophy, I think it helps tremendously.
Okay, give me an example of any one of those that I picked out, or maybe one.
No. I'm not in
disagreement of how it works.
Hey, look, I'm not in a disagreement. I think I am going to face that same conundrum as you, except I'm white, so I'm not going to, I don't have the same level here as you when dealing with perception and how maybe a cop would see it or something like that. Maybe that is the case. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's a black cop that rolls up on the situation. We're jumping into hypotheticals out the wazoo is what I'm saying here.
But we live hypotheticals all the time.
But yeah, we do what ifs all the time. I'm a big what if player. That's fine. The
hypothetical is the partial knowledge. That's what I'm saying. Always have partial knowledge.
But you're saying that we always have partial knowledge. I think there's other situations maybe that we would have full knowledge of what the right thing to do is. Okay. given
Give
the
me an example.
situation. I don't have one right now. I didn't prepare an
All
example
right.
for
How
you. I
about
don't
a
think I could give
baby?
you. I don't think I could give you one right off the top of my head. But I want to go to the base of the issue here, though, David. Is that I think morality is deciphered through rationality, and they covered this yesterday. So if I were you, I'd just go back and listen to that part over again and see
It was
see if you
three
can't
hours,
really
man.
flesh it out. I know. It was so funny. Just to take a break from this, I was listening, and like I was like really intent. I was like I was. It was at the end, and then Dale just abruptly ends. And I'm like, dude, Dale just like left the conversation in like mid sentence here almost, and I was like confused. Generally, like that's it, really? That's how we're gonna close it? Then he was like, well, yeah, David told me that we had to wrap up. So, and then I
Yes.
was like, okay, okay.
I've been
That
trying to
was
send a message. Here's the thing, little inside baseball on that. So I cut that section out of the podcast, but when I first started sending messages, Dale, who is a very literal guy, I love you, Dale, but this is classic Dale. I'm writing the thing out. I send it through the Skype chat, and Dale stops what he's saying, and aloud he starts reading the Skype chat.
that's hilarious. That was it was a definite classic moment, man. I was just like I was just dumbfounded. It was just like everything just cut out,
Yeah,
pretty much. But yeah,
that's because it was harshly edited right
fine.
there.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I get it. I get it. But yeah,
So look, I think that maybe we can start wrapping up too, and start having some of these dangling threads left for the audience to work on. But
and
this is kind of my thesis here in all of this. At the end of the day, it all comes down to your calculus of what the right thing to do is in any given situation at any given time. And no one, to my knowledge, has shown their work or given some kind of um, methodological workflow based on their moral ontology or their moral philosophy of how you get from there to how you solve this problem. And so I think that many of these things really don't have solutions. And you say, well, they do, but maybe we can't know them sometimes. And I think that if it has a solution that can't be known, it's indistinguishable. It's functionally indistinguishable from not having a solution.
okay, I get you. We're wrapping up? I would assume now.
Sure.
So
I mean,
so
I
my
can
whole
keep
point,
beating you
David.
up some more, but that's,
I don't think you're really beating me up here. We've agreed on a lot of different things here. We've only converged, I think, or disagreed on ontology really. How we come to know things, I think, like I said, is different for all of us. I think we do come to know things through experience,
sure, that's natural.
through disagreement.
Natural.
So there's a lot to it, and like I said, this is why I was asking for specifics so we could narrow this in. So we could have a discussion on a certain topic in this. But going back to what you were saying about your theories and how you're not finding, I think Dale answered you correctly, and I think Val even backed up Dale when you were having this back and forth with Dale. And even though I understand where you're coming from, I think Dale plugged those gaps pretty successfully. And if you don't buy it, that's just on you, bro. If you don't buy it, I can't do nothing for you. It doesn't mean that it's not successfully satisfactory answer. I thought it was. I was in my car driving home saying, David, stop. He answered your question. I don't know where you want to go. And when Val backed him up, I was like, I didn't get why you kept beating that dead horse, but that was just me. I thought Dale was successful in his answer to you, and I think Val backed him up pretty well.
Well, first of all,
So
Val is wrong.
Val was wrong.
Yes, Val is.
Okay.
Look,
Okay.
Val and I disagree on on morality, on certain aspects of it, and we, have an argument, once a year or so. on this. So I have no problem saying Val is wrong. I will lose the argument every time because Val is smarter than me. But that doesn't mean that he's right about all of it. But that said, look, I'll be glad to take 5 minutes on that, and I'll give you a little bit more inside baseball as well.
Okay, go ahead.
So the inside baseball part is at around that part where that conversation happened, Val needed to take a break, and so Val was gone, and rather than just stop it there, I went ahead and had some conversation with Dale. And then when Val came back, Dale took a break. And so I had some conversation with Val. And so it wasn't so much about
a little jujitsu going on there, man.
Yes. Yes. So once again, if that wasn't clear in the editing, then that means I was
Well,
successful in the editing.
well, brother, you did succeed in that, but now you're on video, so it's not gonna work.
Yeah, no. I mean, you mind if I go to the bathroom real quick?
Yeah,
I mean,
right. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
that doesn't work with video.
You know,
that's
it's
why
funny.
we're
We
wrapping
actually
up.
we had a guy in one of our broadcasts that actually had to cut out because he was actually having some serious issues, and he had to actually break. And it's not, you can edit it out, but it's still hard to actually do it on video, man. It's kind of like once that camera starts rolling, you're kind of committed.
I'm gonna have you educate me on video because I really need help with that.
Yeah.
So look, let's take 5 minutes on that though. Since you brought it up,
Okay.
And it's perfectly okay, by the way, as we do these shows, that each person kind of go back to the last show and pick out something that they think wasn't covered well enough or so far. So I that's fine. The tete-a-tete that we were having was about how you get from an is to an ought. And so I was suggesting, as I have on the board since then, and as I have before then, you can't get from an is to an ought. So you can make all of the is statements you want to, but at some point, you're just going to have to put an ought statement in front of it. And that's not actually a bridge. That's just the is ought problem. And so what Dale did is he formed a syllogism that he thought dealt with the problem. And his syllogism was basically A, is statement, B, is statement, C, ought statement, conclusion, ought. and so I didn't state my objection to him very well on the podcast, which I have acknowledged since then. But my real objection was I think that's an ill-formed syllogism. Simply by making your third point an ought statement, that doesn't mean that you created a bridge from is to ought. And Dale still has to prove his ought statement. He still has to prove that the is an ought. And so he's at the same place he was when he started. There is simply no bridge from is to ought. And so, yeah, I think that Dale's syllogism was ill-formed, even if I am somehow...
And Val was wrong.
I believe his syllogism was ill-formed, but even if technically it was not ill-formed, that was the objection that I had. Yeah. And so him just inserting C ought is not actually solving the is ought problem. It's just an insertion that you still have to go through now and prove. Well, why is that ought? You're at the same place you were at the beginning of the syllogism.
Well, like I said, if you all want to see David get beat down a little bit, just go in that section and watch how Dale schools him there. And that's all I got to say about it, man. I can't remember the entire thing. I wish I had the some of the transcript there. I mean, it was an interesting point in the conversation, I thought.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
And like I said, I thought he successfully answered you. And that Val backed him up. So it was just kind of like that. It kind of satisfied my curiosity, kind of satisfied my look. But overall, I mean, just in lieu of wrapping up or whatever, I think that, for your position, I think not only do you have to make a case against the intuition, but you got to show how moral progression and convergence are more probable in a naturalist theory, and that and understand that moral disagreements don't mean that moral realism isn't true. I mean, it's possible, and it's an area we have to explore. And experience, obviously, we would definitely argue on that. And
Mhm.
I think because I really think that moral facts are just as real as epistemic realism. I think that you can make an argument from epistemic realism like Terence Cuneo did, and once we establish that, once you're able to, and I'm not saying that a natural, a real, moral realist that's is a natural moralist. I don't think he's at the point where, or they're at the point of successfully making a case, but that's not saying that it won't come. I'm open to the evidence there. However, um, once we get into moral epistemology, how we come to know morality, I think we'll have a lot of common ground there. I think it's the ontology that really is the biggest thing. Um, I think there's a lot of agreement we will have when it comes to moral epistemology, how we come to know certain things. Um, and that's why I was just kind of like, where do you want to go with this? So I could properly prepare. But in a nutshell, that's kind of like my closing statement. If you want to jump, I'll give you the final word on that. But
Well, sure. So I appreciate your time, and I think you did well. But I think maybe a couple of the big gaps that we have would be, I think that you simply assert, because it's a popular notion, that moral facts exist and our intuition tells us so, so that must be so. And I think that puts too much weight on intuition, and it does not investigate the situation close enough. I've asked for examples, for instance, on what a moral fact is that was there before we discovered it, and then we discovered it. I asked for an example of a moral fact that we didn't know was a moral fact, but then we discovered it somehow, and it turned into a moral fact. When I've asked you to talk about um, how you know what the right thing to do is in a given situation. You gave me several things. By the way, I agreed with all of those, but all of those were naturalistic things, um, and so they were very easy for me to agree with. Um, so at the end of the day, I don't see any reason to look beyond naturalistic, complex social rules and conventions that beings ontologically similar to ourselves, social creatures, uh, wouldn't come up with. This is what we do, and some of them are so useful. Like, for instance, don't kill people for looking at you funny. Um, that becomes God said, "Thou shalt not kill." It's a couple of very small statements before you get there, and well, it's a natural part of the world that thou shalt not kill. And no, actually, it's just a very highly useful thing for social creatures to come up with. In fact, that should be one of the first rules that any social group is going to come up with. Otherwise, they're not going to last very long. And that is the truth, I think, of so much of what we think of as moral intuition now. Now, have I proven that case? No, I don't think so. I don't have the scholarship or the mental horsepower to prove the case. But I think it's the beginnings of a conversation, and it should make us all begin to question merely that we have this intuition that these things like moral realities exist. I agree with David Russell on so much, and we didn't spend a lot of time talking about what we agree with, because at the end of the day, when it comes down to difficult moral situations, we have to all go through that same calculus to figure out what is the right and the wrong thing to do. And I think one of the dead giveaways is even after we've come up with the thing that we do, after the fact, we still may sometimes wonder, did we do the right thing? Why do we do that? Because at the end of the day, we really don't know. And I contend that the reason we don't know is because, there probably really isn't a right thing. I want to see how this conversation progresses with Teddy and Darren Lute. You've had some experience with Darren Lute.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
And you survived. Teddy, I know you haven't had any experience with Teddy, I don't think.
No.
Those are two personalities who, I'm just going to say it, I don't think they're going to get along well.
No? All right.
I think that you're
you
going to
have a feisty one coming up.
I think you're going to get the feisty show that you didn't get in the first two shows. And so if you're watching this series, I think the next one is going to be really, really interesting. I personally don't know where it's going to go because Matt is going to be moderating that discussion. He's a very different personality than me. The discussion is on a very high impact kind of topic. And we've got two people in the ring that are not afraid to punch each other in the face.
Nice.
I can't wait.
Yeah, that's always good.
So with that, thank you so much for listening, everyone. We'll see you in the comments, David Russell.
Thank you. Sir. Not a problem, man.